Hello and welcome to our latest episode of the Kith and Kin podcast, Stories from the Hospitality Industry. I'm really happy to welcome Susan here today to tell us all about the ups and downs that have brought her to where she is and what makes the hospitality industry so special. Hi, thank you so much for coming to join me with this conversation. Let's just start with an introduction to who you are and what you do, please.
Hi, Patty. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm so delighted to be here today. My name is Susan. I am Chief Marketing Officer at Kitch, and we're a strategic social agency. Largely hospitality brands, so about 60% hospitality brands, and then we look after some food, drink, and lifestyle brands too. Kind of our bread and butter is very much hospitality clients, and we adore it very much so.
Excellent. So that's what we want to get into. I want to know why you adore it. So let's start with your story. So how did you first start in hospitality? Where was your first experience of hospitality? So where did you get from there to here?
I think it's quite similar to what a lot of people are, is that it was my first job. You go back to my family are actually horticulture family, and I was probably one of three, and I was very much like, my mum had left hotel school, so in Europe that's obviously a huge thing in terms of horticulture and in terms of hospitality, and so she'd done that, but then when she with my dad, they'd set up the kind of greenhouse and growing business. So from a food perspective, very much had grown up in fresh produce side of stuff, but then I very much was like, I'm not doing the family business. My brothers were both in there. So I went out to get a job, and I walked into a restaurant and said, please can I have a job? I want to be a chef, I decided at that point. So it's quite unusual, I think, for a 16-year-old job in the kitchen. 16-year-old girl going in saying, can I work in the kitchen? And they had a KP job. So I started as a KP, and then ended up working in kind of salads and starters and desserts and all that bit. And then I kind of realised after a year or two that I did want to be a chef, and that actually I really wanted to go front of house. I was quite lucky, I suppose, in that I experienced, I think I did a year and a half in the kitchen, and then I went out front of house and worked there up until university. But then even when I was at university, came back and forth to the same restaurant.
But isn't KP such a great place to start? Everyone sort of thinks it's the lowest of the low, and you're starting, and it's like, actually, what you learn as a KP is invaluable to everything. And the KP so often is a linchpin making everything work. Because if the KP stops, the whole thing collapses. Yeah. What a great place to start.
Yeah. And do you know what? I think I was better front of house because I'd done KP. I've been in the kitchen. The chefs knew me, and although I went front of house, I understood them better. And even now, in my job now, I understand how businesses work operationally better, and I can understand where we can come up with a great idea, but if it doesn't work operationally and that goes as minute detail as the KP, then I can do my job better because I can provide campaigns that are actually going to operationally work. And I think I saw
absolutely
Tom from Bill's speak the other day, and he said one of the first things he'd done coming from an operations background is he bought every site 200 new teaspoons. And I was like, it's that simple if you understand those really granular details that are the bugbears of our everyday life. If you understand them, you can help sort them out. It's as simple as that. I then, when I spent at house girl,
if you're not in hospitality, you don't consider the mystery of the teaspoons.
Oh my gosh. Your teaspoons is just another thing. And so when I then went front of house, I would always be the Saturday girl. So I'd open with the reps manager. So I'd do an 8 till 6, and I loved doing that shift because I was like, doing my hours, but I still get my evening. I'd normally be back there drinking, but actually working was 8 till 6. But that 8 till 9 was actually only about 2 or 3 of us front of house. And if you made them coffees without them having to ask, there would be a bacon sandwich waiting on the side for you.
Yeah.
But if you had to ask, there would not be a bacon sandwich on the side for you. And no one else got bacon sandwiches, only the team at the start of the day. But it's small things like that. And you learn And I think that's what I love about hospitality. It's those small details that you learn about your regulars. And we had so many regulars, like Trent's in Chichester was where I worked, was iconic to that period. And everyone in Chichester, I can still walk in town now and see regulars from when I was 15, and that is going back nearly 20 years ago. And actually that's where I met Natalie, the founder of Kitch. So she was working Pizza Express across the road. Her boyfriend at the time was working behind the bar at Trent's, but also her and her uni crowd used to come in drinking, and we'd serve them brunch hangover the next morning. So I met Natalie, who's founder of Kitch. That's how I met her. Yeah. It's serving her brunch hangover. It's working with people. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's so common that happens, that people, get to, and actually that is the beauty of hospitality, because it's not just the staff doing that, customers are doing that. It's where you meet people outside of having any sort of ties or roles or anything, and you can meet people sort of on this equal playing field and build those relationships from there, which is when you find these interesting sort of synergies and ways to work with each other. How fantastic.
Yeah, and I think you learn people skills like nothing else. Like, to understand, like, my dad is classic. He loves to have banter at table, and he's the customer. And if a waiting staff, or no matter how experienced or unexperienced they are, if they can give him that same level of banter back, and I'd say it's a very generational kind of comedy, and also the language, like, he's very Dutch sense of humour, so it's quite blood sometimes. And you can just see it when he will go because the staff have been brilliant. But you have to be able to read the room instantly, or read the table, I should say, when you serve. And I think that's what that taught me, is I knew when some people wanted me to talk more. I knew when people wanted me to say less. And I knew that what great service looked like from table to table is different. And that for me is the same now. Like, I know clients that want me to pick up the phone. Some clients want me to send them a WhatsApp. Some want a really formal email. Behaviors that you learn apply to the rest of your world, and in everything you do. But it's such a great learning ground for really good basic tools for us in life.
And I think you're totally right. And I don't think it ever occurred to me, but you've just put that so simply. It always irritates me now when I'm dealing with somebody. If they send me voice notes, I hate voice notes. It's not my thing. I know some people love it, but I hate it. But people, or they're phoning me when I want to be emailed, and I'm like going, why don't you know this about me? Why haven't you worked this out? Or even when I've told me, why are you still doing it the other way, where I've told you I don't want to be communicating? And I'd never, for all the wonderful things that I think hospitality does, I'd never put the two together. But you're totally right. The reason why I get particularly cross about it is I was going, because I do this for other people, so why are you not doing it for me? And you're right, it is a lesson that is learned by nightmare customers like your dad. They're the ones that used to give me they would stress me out, but you learn how to do that. You learn how to adapt really quickly to the style of the customer, and it's your job to adapt to that customer, every single time. And as you say, you've got you might be serving 20 tables all at once, but each of them want you to be to approach them slightly different. And it's your job to read that and know that and to adapt to them, rather than them have to adapt to you and your style. And I had never considered that. Obviously I knew that was a skill I'd picked up, but never made that connection.
Yeah, I think that's how you win back customers, though. And because, like, my dad, again, a great example. He came back and he'd gone to Wagamama's the first time. And in my head, he probably wouldn't have enjoyed being on, like, the shared tables. But he loved it because whoever served him was utterly brilliant. And do you know what I think Wagamama's has also done well, is that they've given their staff freedom to kind of give little perks. So they'd seen one of the guy that served him at Wagamama's, they then saw, like, if they're in a shopping centre and they saw them later on in the day, he was obviously on a break or something, and he just said, "Oh, it was so lovely chatting to you earlier," and gave them a £10 voucher for next time they were into Wagamama's. And I was like, that team member had the ability to do that. I don't know whether that was formalised or he had it from somewhere else. But he did. And he adores it. But the service was so good and so personalised. When actually a lot of people sometimes struggle with like the digital side of it. But I think it's the fact that you can tap into exactly what you want or what you don't want. And I think that's what it taught me. So hospitality very much. Yeah, I think some of the favourite working years were the ones where you're like, I was shocked at the cost of a pint when I left that place because it's quite a pricey place. And I actually was the opposite of everyone else, where I then went out drinking when I turned 18 in like other establishments I was allowed to then drink in. And thought everything was really cheap because I knew that's what I learned was the prices there, and it was probably one of the more pricier places to drink. But the network you had and the skills you learned is fab. It's so great. I went to university and then I actually so I went to Exeter. But when I went to university, I'd go back and work at Trent's, and I worked in kind of the cafes and stuff when I was at uni, and very much went on the events focus because I'd done some kind of wedding catering as well. So I've done a lot of catering side stuff, which again is another ball game. And you go to who you're dealing with and the biggest day of their lives. It's another ballpark altogether. Then I went to London. So I worked for a conferencing company for quite a long time now. I think maybe 3 years, 4 years. And I had the sweet, sweet job of venue booking, which, oh my gosh, being like, it's like a year. And in fact, I went for a sales job because I just wanted to get to London. And the guy read, he in the interview, he literally said to me, he's like, "You want to be in logistics, don't you?" And I was like, "We do." And he just put me straight forward to Caroline, one of the directors. She was like, "Yeah, come aboard, sit back." And then, about 9 months into that role, my line manager went on mat leave and she was in charge of venue booking. So I got that gig, and oh my gosh, suddenly like the fam trips, the like wooing of the fans. So I then was on the other side of people being like, we got invited to like Sushi Samba's opening, and to be at those suddenly like early 20s and seeing all these cool places open and being kind of having it first, I was like, that's cool. And very much my social butterfly side of enjoying all of those things and getting all these things was in its element.
What could go wrong? London, young person, London, great venue openings, all of it. Yeah. No, I can imagine. Boring.
Boring, go on. It extended really working across Europe. So I did venue booking for hotels across Europe. And I say customer service, then the like personalization, what you can do there, and you saw it then. It's huge. Like, I remember speaking to the sales guy at Sofitel Hotels, and he was just what they were doing at the time, which now I think a lot of places are doing, like Hawksmoor do it really well, where they're like literally recording what jam someone said they liked at breakfast, and that next time they're coming, that jam by their bedside table. Seeing that side of the hotels industry, because I think that hyper personalization, I think they were kind of really leading in that point. So that was really cool. And then I think from a personal point of view, then I was coming back to Chichester, and that's when my contacts from the days of serving at Trent's came into use, because I literally tapped up Natalie and was like, "I'm coming back. I'd really like to kind of stay within hospitality." But now you could commute London from Chichester, but at that time, to be in the office, of course, too much. So, I've been keeping an eye on Kitch, which Natalie founded 2013, I want to say. So when I came back, she was a couple of years old, and I was kind of like, is there anything? And at first there wasn't, but we kept in touch, and then she fell pregnant, so she was starting a family and needed someone on board to help kind of manage the agency. So I came on board 10 years ago now, which is bonkers, at Kitch, and the opportunity to be working in an agency that is servicing hospitality brands was really fun. And we've looked up some really cool brands, and
tell me what does Kitch do? So what is your role at Kitch? So you're
CMO, so Chief Marketing Officer.
CMO. Brilliant. And what does Kitch do?
Okay, so
And then
so we do social media. So anything to do with social media, we cover. So the majority of our brands will do full retainers, which is where we literally scoop up social media. We'll
take over.
do all the posting, the scheduling, the community management, the strategy planning, but then kind of extra services that we do for retained clients, but also on a project basis, is paid advertising, content creation, influencer marketing, brand partnerships. Natalie was previously head of digital at Tasker, and she comes from a family of hospitality kind of people as well. So it was very much built on, again, wanting to stay in hospitality, but I think the hours where she was head of digital at Tasker were insane. And so she started it on the basis of wanting to provide something to social at a time when, at that point, Twitter was like the lead channel. And we were trying to, what we're doing now with TikTok is what we were doing 10 years ago with Instagram.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Except for with video instead of little, it's the same thing. Yeah. Yes, you're right.
I mean, if you go back to, we did this recently because we did a rebrand. We were looking at case studies, and there's some really cool brands we worked with them. We wanted to talk about them, but it's, got to keep case studies fresh and everything. But we went back through some of the reports and the stats, like, you couldn't even justify it as like good now, but at that time was like bonkers and had done so well. But it's just all reflective of where that social media landscape is. And we kind of worked through clients that whole time, and there's been a whole kind of host of hospitality clients. But I think, and I know you talked about like ups and downs on this podcast a lot, but I think what we saw during COVID with how hospitality were, I mean, it's incredible, right? Like,
No,
I saw on a LinkedIn post this morning about chefs and GMs and people in hospitality being like the biggest change makers in terms of like every day. Like, they're always adapting, they're always changing, like whether they need to come up with a new item because there's something like someone at the table.
That's the industry,
But on a bigger scale, like what everyone did then was incredible, and we were really fortunate because I think it was quite a scary time for everyone, but like I think hospitality particularly, and as service providers where we were majority of our clients were hospitality, it was really scary. But I mean, we actually, I think we know we had one of our best years because we were able to pivot with them, and I think we learned that kind of ability to make the most of the situation and go, what else can we do? And obviously we were in a strong position, being it's all about digital focus, which was suddenly the main.
It had to be. It had to be. So, so when you're working with your clients, you work with some really major brands, don't you? And and so when you start with a new client, because you to take over their social media and to be running that with all of their campaigns and everything they're doing there, you really I imagine have to have a really deep understanding of their brand and their values and all of those kind of things. And so what are the sort of questions you're asking a new client?
I mean, we have a full onboarding process. It's pretty thorough because, like you say, values have to be there. You have to understand the intricacies of the brand, what they offer, and politics. You have to understand the politics of the people in the business, and certain stuff might be done not because it's the best solution, but because there's a reason that isn't necessarily to do with strategy, which is always right. That's the reality, right? So we spend a lot of time getting to know the teams, and we also, we aim with our retained clients to be an extension of their marketing team. So we are a tool that, rather than them having to upskill and constantly kind of keep on top of trends, like we're doing that as a team, and then we service the marketing teams within these hospitality brands. And it varies. So for like something like Young's Pubs, they've got the most amazing content creation team, and they are brilliant at harnessing employee generated content. Like, we want to elevate them and help their teams kind of elevate within internally. So we support them on strategy, then we support them with what I call the boring stuff, which is the scheduling, the reporting, the proofing, the stuff that if you want to keep really strong people in your teams, it helps take the boring bits from them and lets them like foster their creativity. And then for other clients, they literally need that creativity plugin, so we can offer that as well. But unless you actually understand the brand and how far you can push it, like TikTok, you've got really cool brands who kind of just hand us the keys, and when they do that,
oh wow, yeah.
But obviously, the trust has to be so good, and it takes time. So we always say, like, the first 3 months, you're going to have a lot more contact from us because we need to do more. Is this okay? Is this pushing it too far?
Because you have to learn about them, don't you? And that's not just what's on paper. It's learning. It's experimental, because that's the other thing about social media. I don't think everybody really properly understands that it's a really great tool, but it's also quite experimental in that you're always testing, aren't you? You're always testing. Where's this going?
And especially with organic. And, we know one of the biggest challenges is proving ROI on social. I can't, the amount of times I've sat there and had that conversation is ridiculous, and it's really hard because actually the moments that have the biggest impact on social are normally linked to something that's an emotional connection. And that is where the magic happens you can't do that without input from the teams. You can't do that without sitting and talking to them to find out what those special moments are and the stories within the business. And whether that's internally of like people in the business or initiatives they might be running, or the customer stories. I know this was something we did, but the Ivy did some really beautiful content recently, all illustrative, but it was about the stories of people meeting at the Ivy, and those really emotional moments you could only find out about by talking to the people in the business. So
and I think that's the thing that people forget when they're creating their social media, is that what makes their venues so special is this opportunity for people to emotionally connect. But that still exists in the digital world. And that actually, as you say, the storytelling is so important, because it's this extension of the word of mouth. Particularly, I know we are particularly talking about organic social media here, as opposed to obviously the paid for. But those stories
like that, right? And actually, there's some really strong campaigns that are very much transactional in terms of their offering and the value offering that they're doing in that ad. But a lot of, when you've got an amazing organic campaign, you can amplify that with paid. But what I think is the magic is those emotional connections, and it's finding that magic, and you've got to move that to digital. A huge amount of people are discovering new hospitality brands on social. But they're also looking for new experiences, whether that is something like competitive socializing, or like, if I think the first time I went to Hoppers, like for me, I wanted to go there because I'd spent like the most amazing month in Sri Lanka, and I wanted a little bit of that magic. Yeah. And to find somewhere that had authentic, but do you know where I saw it? I saw it on social. And so you've got to find those moments of magic, and if you don't create them digitally, then how are you going to get people to enjoy? And
this,
we know that's like, well,
no, go on, you carry on. Sorry.
Oh, well, no, I was just going to say, with community management, we know there's so much opportunity, and there's a time and place for AI, but there's also a time and place for really human interaction. And when you are talking to people in DMs, so Young's Pubs let us give up free pints. We do voice note on DMs. Like, if someone says something, we can go back with a voice note, and we know the brand so well that we can be like, sorry to hear this happened. Let us look into this for you, and we'll get back to you. Because half the time you can't fix it straight away, but what you can do, know you're looking into it. And I really believe you should have the same service online that you would get in person. And like we said earlier, like, that looks different for different people, and you have to reflect what people are giving you online with how you respond to it.
And what I was going to say is that I recently wrote a report actually on why social media wasn't working for hospitality businesses, and but I was serious, but also it was attention grabbing, but there was a lot in there, because actually what a lot of businesses, but it's speaking to what you're saying, because what you're saying is does work is the storytelling and the connecting emotionally. And there's, as we said, that extension of what you're doing physically into the digital world. But what I see too many hospitality businesses doing is just chasing trends and going, oh, there's a TikTok video, let's copy it and repeat it and do that. And rather than actually really understanding, because that's just scrolling entertainment. That's what people want. We're scrolling past it and here's a piece of entertainment. Ha ha ha, isn't that funny? But it doesn't engage people. It's just something that's in front of them. Well, it's not about this, but yeah.
Entertainment is also, can be anything, right? So if we think about what TV, it can be drama, it can be comedy. So when we say entertainment, we don't just mean make them laugh. We make them laugh, but also, can you make them feel nostalgia? Can you make them think of that moment they shared with a really special family member or friend? And when I go back to hospitality, like my personal experiences, my favourite places are often, the food matters. It matters a lot.
Yeah.
But it's often about the entire experience. So, like, again, like I remember going to Dishoom with my parents, and we didn't know, it was early days of Dishoom, and it was like, we didn't know what to eat. And the guy was like, do you trust me to pick for you? And he did. And he said, is there any like hard no's? And we kind of said like anything we didn't like. And he's like, okay, leave it with me. And the most incredible meal we've ever had. Well, not ever, but like one of the most incredible meals. Yeah. Amazing because of how it was handled and how the team were. And we all know Dishoom do that brilliantly. So it's so reflective. But yeah, that's what we mean by entertain. And I think if you make them, we've recently partnered with Cam to deliver State of Social, and part of the outcomes of that is a benchmarking report for social media in hospitality specifically. And we kind of asked about all these heads of marketing, what their challenges were, what their focuses are on. But obviously the data is showing what's performing and what's not. And what was so interesting to see is that there is no correlation between how often you post and engagement. We know that, but like the data shows it too. So we know that like there are brands that are posting way more that aren't getting that same engagement. There's brands posting way less and getting much better engagement. And when you go into it, it's because of the quality of content. And what they've done is they've read their audience, cross-referenced it with that channel, and they understand completely what each of the audiences on each of their channels wants to see. And sometimes that is quite similar, but sometimes it can vary hugely between the different channels. But also like one pub group to another is going to have an actually very different audience, and how they engage with that is going to be completely different. And I think the community management piece there was so interesting, is because a lot of brands aren't doing it in the evenings and weekends, yet when are we busiest?
Yeah,
like that's when our brand's busiest.
And I think going back to what I'd been saying in the report was that actually the mistake that people are making is seeing this as two separate things, and that it shouldn't be. If you understand your business and the physical, what you are doing in there and what you are providing for your customers and who your customers are and what they value about you and why you matter to them, then all those things are still exactly relevant in that virtual world, because it's as you say, it's an amplification of that world, and and you're recreating it virtually, rather than trying to do something completely random and going off in some random direction, which is, as your report demonstrates, you can do that as often as you like, but it won't have impact unless you've got real meaning and purpose behind even what you're doing.
Yeah. And I think with that, like, you talk about social being a bolt-on, there's one thing that can help prove the return on social and the impact it can have, but it's also by making sure it's more kind of thoughtful to the actual, like, if you're running a campaign or you're trying to like direct traffic to a certain objective, if you include social at the thought process from the day dot when you're building this campaign, rather than going, okay, this is our campaign, oh, what are we doing on social? It won't perform as well because it's not integrated to social. And if you go social first with your campaign building and you're already thinking about it when you're building kind of campaigns and marketing campaigns that you're doing in venue, but also online in other spaces, it instantly becomes more tied up and kind of the brand is stronger across the board, because that story is joined up. And also you can then kind of think about how you're tracking from the start, and everyone who's then involved will be clear on that. Whereas I think if you add social as a bolt-on, quite often it's seen as the reason why something didn't perform is actually like, well, if it's not social first campaign, it might not perform as well as it could have done if we think about it earlier on.
And I think this is the other thing that people haven't necessarily thought about is that I mean, I am old enough to be pre-social media. Of course, I'm old enough to be pre-social media, but that's the point. So it's so new, really, isn't it? Well, so Facebook's 20 years. Is it? Is it about 20 years? It's something like that. And so
it's one of my partner and me have been together for an age, and one of the like ins was he set up my Facebook account. So yeah, that's
wow,
going.
This is So social and I know I am showing my age here, but actually I'm not. I think the world has sped up. It's going so much faster now. And social media is a demonstration of that. Just even the number of different platforms you could be on, the algorithms change almost, I don't know, but it feels like they're changing daily, to be able to crack but I think sometimes when people are posting on social media, they've got this idea of social media, which is possibly even 5 years or even older ago. Like social media is, if you're on social media and you as you say, post once a day and put something up there, it will have an impact. But social media has changed, and it's changing so rapidly to be able to cut through the noise, because there's so much noise now. It is that posting with meaning and being targeted and know who you want to, rather than expecting everybody to see it. It's about knowing what it is you're trying to achieve with it.
And I think it's being really transparent with that across your teams. I mean, it's more challenging the bigger brand is, but we actually found, I think, the kind of mid-sized brands are the ones that have nailed it the most, because they've got more formal processes in place, yet there is still resource to support, say, from different teams. But you have to remember it's a really exciting tool to reach new audiences too.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think currently the ones with the money to spend are Gen Z. Like most of them are at home. They've given up hope on saving for a deposit, but they also live in a life that looks really good every day. So they're willing to spend in hospitality venues. And that doesn't discount other other audiences and age groups and demographics. But the place to kind of reach Gen Z, and not exclusively, I should add, because there is that big myth that TikTok is only for Gen Z, because it's not. We've proven that, and we've shown that. But Gen Z is a very good place to reach. TikTok is a very good place to reach Gen Z customers. And if you can, it's low cost content. It's not expensive to create. You don't have to post 3 times a day. People think it's 3 times a day because of the kind of things that were being said about it early days, but it's not. We normally say start 3 times a week. And also, you've got to quality and quantity, and you've got to balance that brand and trend piece. Like you were saying, is don't jump on every trend. The marketing director from Bergen Lobster said, actually, on a panel I was with her recently, but she said they have kind of a rule in-house that if there's even hesitation about a trend, then it's just a no.
Yeah.
They do consider a trend. Like if it's said and mentioned and someone's got an idea, if there's an instant, that sounds great, they go for it. So it's not that they avoid it, but they don't lead with going on every trend. And that's kind of a new phrase, is trend jacking, that's been said a lot. That some brands will just kind of go all in on everything, and that works. But you've also got to find ways to. There is by nature different generations within businesses, and you've got to figure out ways to showcase the value. And dismissing that communication piece internally is a really big mistake in my eyes, because you've got to get them on board, even if it's really challenging, because if they're on board, you've got a much bigger chance of getting better engagement and getting more people helping you internally to do really great content.
I was going to say that. Yeah, and I think that's a real key point, though, isn't it? That rather than people seeing social media as being a magic bullet, it is a really, really useful tool to use once you've got your internal piece right. So once once everyone's on board and everyone's, you know what your purpose is, and you know what your mission is, and you know why you even exist and why you're important, then social media becomes a really useful tool to be able to get that message out. So I just wanted to ask, so I work a lot with independents. So I'm, the businesses I'm working with are tend to be on a much smaller scale than the brands you're working with, but yet all the same things really apply. It's just that they've potentially got, they've got smaller budgets and less people to get on and do this stuff. So what would be sort of top tips for them to take from learning from what you're doing that they could potentially be implementing in their business or should be considering in their business with regard to social media?
I mean, I think it's the foundations, right? Like, don't try and run before you can walk. So choose maybe 2 brand channels that you are actually going to put your full energy in. Don't try and do it all. We don't really, I think we've got 1 client left on X maybe now, but why people still trying there, I don't know. Who are your audience? If they're older, Facebook, especially like a really community-led venue, Facebook is still really relevant. Instagram will be relevant. If you have got a younger audience or you're trying to bring a new generation through TikTok, absolutely. But also go to your team, however limited it is, and look at the resource of who works best on those platforms, because realistically, your TikTok content would be quite different. If you don't have the resource for TikTok yet and you're a tiny team, then focus on what your audience needs and maybe do Facebook and Instagram if your audience is older. But like I said, you could also flip it the other way and go, Facebook, we don't need to do right now, and we're going to put our energy into TikTok and Instagram. But that is completely dependent on the brand and their audience. And then I think it's that thing of figuring out, and people fail to sometimes go, social can be a tool for figuring this out, which is what brands think people want to hear about social. And then there's actually digging into the data and seeing what people want to see about social. And, put it out there, talk to your people, to your community on social, and find out what your brand, they want to see from your brand. And that works for both. Can they tell you more about what they want to see in venue? Can they tell you more about events they want to see, or kind of different offerings on the bar or whatever that is? But also we can use social to kind of amplify different opportunities. But if you try and tell them 10 things at once, that's too much. So just choose a few really core messages and focus on them. And depending on how much you have at your fingertips, I don't doubt they have got some CRM data, so use that. Dig in and focus on who's doing what where and what your people want to see. I'm sure they do mailers. Like I was speaking to, I can't remember which tech company he's from, but a guy who was a salesman at some tech company, and he kind of ran a local village pub, and he was saying that he used Airship, and he was like, he's like, I'm only one venue and it's magic. Like, imagine what it can do.
Yeah.
He said Facebook and mailers were like the gold dust to his marketing campaigns, and that's where he put his energy into. And actually spending time looking at data and what that can tell you about what you should do or shouldn't do is huge. And then you get next step. If you've got this is probably where people find it too much, is like you take that data and you use it to run paid campaigns if you've got the budget. And, people will quite often spend more if they can see the results. They might say they have small budgets until they start seeing the results, and then they suddenly find the budget.
And actually, we haven't even touched on paid for, but actually there are some amazing results that come from that if it's done well and targeted properly, isn't there?
Yeah, huge. That's where you can see ROI, and that's where you can see where you're driving footfall. Like, you can actually see that.
And I think that's the opportunity there, because for small independents, I started 25 years ago, and the opportunity to advertise what was the point? Because you'd put an advert in the paper, but so what? Nobody saw it, and you couldn't target it. Whereas what you can do now with the same budget on social media is absolutely insane, because you are totally targeting from every criteria you can possibly think of, just even you can target your next door neighbor, you can really get that close, can't you? It's absolutely fantastic. But you know what? I'm going to have to ask you to come on again to speak about that because I mean, I know we're about to open up a whole new, but because there's so much involved in that. But for now, I am going to have to say goodbye to you, but I will ask you back again because I think there's a part 2 which is paid for.
When you talk about local independence, I'm like, oh my gosh, micro influencers, they need to use that as well. So
yes, of course. But let's get you back again because I want to tap into that even more because I think there's so much more that there is to consider about social media and it's not just one thing. But in the meantime, if anybody wants to, your status social report, that's free for people to get hold of. Is that right?
Yeah. So it's basically an initiative we ran to kind of give back to the hospitality community. So that is on our website and free to download. So yeah, that's brilliant.
And that has loads of insight. Yeah.
Feedback is totally welcome because the more feedback we get on that, the better it'll be year on year. So yeah, it's really exciting. And I think we should add that we should shout out Vic from Data Talks because the communities, when we talk about hospitality and what they do well, it's they connect people and they build communities. And what we're trying to do online is she's done in WhatsApp groups and that's how we met. So I think that's even more important to acknowledge that I think the way we met is because of the nature of hospitality and how it is for people.
And you are totally right. If we go back to this, even when we were talking about how physically when you start in the industry and you build these networks, but those networks last forever and they just keep building. It is a very exciting industry to meet people and to find people just like you. So I'm very, so great to be able to talk to you on the podcast, and as I say, definitely have you back again to chat some more about social media and obviously your love of the hospitality industries. But for now, thank you so much. I will put all of your contacts and details all into the show notes, and people can find you there and get that state of the social report from the website because I've read it and it was absolutely fascinating. There's a benchmarking and it was benchmarked across so many other hospitality businesses, and so it's really interesting. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Cassie.
Lovely to chat with you.